In today's edition of Introduction to Business, we're going to cover interpersonal relations and communications. It's important in a business for managers and for employees to be able to communicate well. This picture shows a graphic of an abstraction of what communication looks like in the business or in personal lives. You have a sender, a person who has a message and wants to convey it to somebody else. They encode that message. Now, encoding doesn't mean what the NSA and the CIA think of. It means I take this thought that's in my head and I express it somehow via verbally, words, or I express it in paper, or I write it down electronically, and then I send it over some channel. This channel could be a paper, the channel could be text messaging, it could be emails, it could be gestures and pictures. Message gets decoded on the other end that was sent, and the receiver gets a message. Now, this message may not be the same message that the sender sent. Simple example is I was in Spain and we were having dinner, my wife and I. She knew all the Spanish. I didn't know any Spanish. I was the lead guy in Germany, but she was the lead in Spain. So she ordered dinner and she went to the restroom. And while I'm sitting there, the waiter comes over and he goes, "Leche non frio." I said, "Okay, how much?" He said, "Leche non frio." I said, "Okay, how much?" And this went back and forth for a fairly lengthy time, and finally the waiter gave up and walked away. Well, what was the waiter sending? What was his message? Leche non frio. Milk is not cold. He encoded it properly in Spanish. I heard it. I'm a smart guy. Leche, that's milk. Non frio means it's not free. How much? Clearly, the guy was telling me the milk is not cold, but I thought it was not free. This can happen in English. We get things all the time. Well, that's not what I meant. Well, that's what you said. That's what I heard. We can do it in emails. That's why little smiley faces were invented, because people would send emails and not know if somebody was kidding. Language, we just talked about, culture. Even in English, people can have this case a lot of the time. So what types of communication are there? How can we encode our message? Well, we can use oral. Oral is what I'm doing now. I'm speaking. We can do written. Another way I can categorize it is verbal and nonverbal. By verbal, in this case, in this sense, what I mean is using words. Verbal in this sense uses words, a generic term. Nonverbal is non-words. Well, what kind of things are nonverbal? Pictures, body language, how your hands, your gestures, and things like that. We can characterize organizations as being organizational communication as being vertical or horizontal. Vertical, up and down the chain of command. Horizontal, with our peers. Now, which of these is the strongest, do you think? Particularly between, let's say, verbal and nonverbal. Which of these is the stronger message? Well, I think if you watch people, they will, and things like, "Is it okay to come to class?" And I say, "Sure." Now, my verbal message was, it's okay. Nonverbal, especially if you saw my body language right now, would be it's not okay. And I think 99% of the people would get the message that it's not okay, even though my verbal message indicated it was. So there can be language, cultural issues. Nonverbal, things like the okay symbol in the United States or America is an obscene gesture in Latin America. So you need to be very, very careful as you go to other countries and other cultures. Technology. Many companies have a chief information officer. Communication is very important to a business, especially these days where you can have hackers and things like that come in. You can talk now about case where we're experiencing, for example, the coronavirus. Do I have enough capacity to to pass information? Do we have the technology to have a virtual office? Well, you can have a virtual office, but you miss out on having a real office. It's just not the same in terms of the connection, and in particular, the informal communication that takes place. You meet somebody in the hall, you talk to them, you find out what's going on. And it can add stress not being connected. Now, you have to be very careful about communication. What you do and say at work is not private. The company has access to that. If you're using Gmail or something at the office, that's not your private information. The company is entitled to see that. And so you need to think, do you want that email or that text to show up on the company bulletin board out in the halls? You need to be very careful about that. And here's something I picked up that I call Klinger's half-life theory of communication. I made that up. The idea is that if you have a relationship, the quality of that relationship with that other person falls in half every 3 months, unless you have face-to-face contact. That's why long-distance relationships are very difficult for people. But it's also difficult in work. When I was dealing with my counterparts in London, we wouldn't see each other very often. I would go over there, or they would come over here. We'd establish a relationship. It would be good. We'd communicate. We'd be on the same page. But over time, that goes down, even if we talk to each other every day or every week, because you can't see what's going on. You might think, they didn't send that today. I'll bet they're not working very hard, or they must have some real problems. When maybe, in fact, we did get it, and I just didn't know about it. So there's all sorts of things that can happen without face-to-face contact. And so it's very important, if you ever manage a group remotely, to re-energize that relationship with face-to-face communication. We'll continue this in the next video.